Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
And that's right, everybody. There we go. Best Seat in the House podcast coming at you once again, right here on YouTube. As always, we're also live on Twitch for the first time. So if you're checking that out, we appreciate everybody tuning in and seeing what's going on here at the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Cramer, along with my co-host, Daniel Bobo Curlin. And Dan, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing fine. The Rangers had one heck of a streak going on, but unfortunately, as we saw, it ended at 10.
It did end at 10 on Sunday night. That's the New York Rangers record-tying win streak. That's correct. They won 10 straight in 1939, 1940. They won 10 straight in 1972, 1973, and now they've won 10 straight again this year in 2023-2024 season. And unfortunately, it came to a loss. You know what, though? The Columbus Blue Jackets, as we see here tonight, right now the game is going on live, the second half of the home and home with the Rangers and Columbus Blue Jackets. It was a tough first period. It looks like this Columbus team matches up pretty well against the Rangers, especially that fourth line they had was really giving them problems in the first period.
Yeah, I don't know. This is giving me PTSD from past baseball seasons. Every time the Mets play against Miami in September.
Yeah, it's kind of like that snake bit feeling, right?
Yeah, exactly. It just feels like that.
Yeah, and the goalie is standing on his head through the early going of this period so far, and the Blue Jackets just doing everything right. We saw Matt Rempe had a really good chance early on, was not able to cash in. Our fourth line's playing pretty good too, but you got to give Columbus credit as they're coming out there. I know Johnny Gaudreau had a couple of good chances in that first period. And let's be honest, they really beat the Rangers up in that first game they played this past Sunday night, which we'll get back to right now, as Rangers ended up dropping that game 4-2. Just a really disappointing way to end the winning streak, especially against one of the worst teams in the league, right?
Yeah, those teams with the losing records always scare me. It's like in every majors, every one of the big four major sports that happens. I feel like.
Yeah, it kind of had trap game written all over it, right?
Yeah. It just did. This trap game just the day after a game that the Rangers just felt like they were just exhausted from, because that game just seemed that game against the Flyers on Saturday just seemed to take a lot out of them, and I just knew that game on Saturday the Rangers had to win that game because I knew the next day was going to be a tough. The next day was they were going to be winded the next day against playing against the Flyers on Saturday, and I was right. And luckily they got that one on Saturday because.
That's a good point. That's a really good point, actually. That game against the John Tortorella-led Philadelphia Flyers on Saturday afternoon in Philly was just a really, really tough game. I mean, all around, those Flyers play incredible defense. They had the Rangers pinned up. They were not able to get through the neutral zone with any ease at all. And, it's typical Torts hockey that we saw on Saturday, where this is a team that does not do a good job of putting the puck in the back of the net, unlike our Rangers. They were talking about the power play disparity going on with the Rangers and the Philadelphia Flyers. Well, the Rangers are the fifth best team in the league. Over 25% of the time, they convert on the power play, meaning they score a goal whenever the other team takes a penalty. On the other hand, the Philadelphia Flyers are one of the worst teams in the league in that respect, as the Flyers have gone out there and consistently not scored on the power play. As a matter of fact, they allow they're good for about 87% of the time on the penalty kill, which is one of the top units in the league, which means they only allow their opponents to convert about 13% of the time, which is also right around the same percentage, 13, 14%, that they convert on offensively on the power play. So it's really not a good league. The most of the top units in the league have over a 20% conversion rate. So to be that bad on the power play, hey, we saw the same thing 10 years ago, a little bit more than that, when Torts was our coach. Great defense, really not that great skilled offensively.
Yep, I just remember that. I just remember quite often, maybe, and sometimes probably drunkenly yelling out, "Shoot the fuck!" Okay, yelling at the TV. I've been through that. I remember those days. A lot of yelling at the TV, and maybe a TV nearly somehow by some miracle didn't get survived. My TV survived Game 6 of the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals. Not sure how, but it did. Because I was upset that night.
Yeah, I definitely understand that, man. And, it's frustrating watching a team like that. And it's frustrating watching your team not cash in. The Rangers, for a lot of the early part of this year, were over 30% and were the top team in the league. But really over the, from a power play perspective, over the last month and a half or so, they've really come back down to earth. And they're still in the top 5, but it's not the overwhelming power play that we saw early on in the season. Unfortunately, unfortunately, the Rangers are really just trying to patch things together until the trade deadline. Now, the trade deadline, as we know, Dan, is coming up next next Friday, March 8th. So we still got a little bit more than a week to go. But, when you see what's going on with this team right now, what position do you think, if you were the GM right now, if you were sitting in Chris Drury's shoes, what would be the first spot on this team that you would want to address at the trade deadline?
I think they need to go after a center.
Okay. So like a guy to slip there probably in that third center spot where Philip Hedl, his absence is really being felt so far, right?
Yeah, exactly. I feel that's going to be the key things, I feel.
Is there anybody you have in mind? I heard a couple of interesting names, and one of the names that I heard that was very, unexpected, because this is a guy that has put up some pretty decent numbers in the past. This is a guy who is a former first-round pick with number 5 overall, and that's Elias Pettersson. It would take a lot to get him from Vancouver, which, to be honest, actually, now that I'm looking at it, I don't understand why they're one of the top teams in the league. There's no way the thing I read earlier today is correct, that they're shopping him. He's having an awesome season. So put that aside. Where do the Rangers go? Is there anybody you have in mind? Me and you have talked at length at a bunch, talking about a lot of right wings like Frank Vetrano that we like, and guys of that ilk. But from a center perspective, what guy do you like the best, Dan? Is there anybody that you have in mind for that position?
I've been hearing possibly bringing back Tarasenko. I've been hearing.
Yeah, but he's also another right wing.
Yeah. So I haven't really been hearing much in the center market these days.
It's very interesting, and it's funny too. I'm looking at the stats right there, and I'm saying, Elias Pettersson, who the hell put him up in this? I was just reading it earlier today too. One of the I believe it was Forever Blue Shirts was talking about it. One of the Rangers sites that they have over here. But Hey, that's definitely not the case because Vancouver is one of the best teams in the league, and they're not going to be trading their top center. So I guess I was right to be surprised by that.
Yeah,
But
that's be
you know,
surprised.
yeah,
The only reason I could see that even happening is if he's got only a year left of his contract.
well, that's true too. But even at that point, you still, Vancouver right now they're putting themselves in position to potentially win the President's Trophy as the best NHL regular season team. So I can't see why they do it. Although, hey, we got to look back. If you look back at the 1994 trade deadline leading up to the Rangers winning that first Stanley Cup in 54 years, there was a lot of crazy trades going on there that I'm sure a lot of Ranger fans didn't expect to happen and probably at the time didn't really like too much. I mean, I was a little bit too young, so it didn't really phase me that much when I saw some of these guys getting traded. But when you go back and you look at that deadline and you see some of the names that the Rangers traded, it's pretty shocking. But it would be even more shocking to me, to be honest, if Vancouver trades Pedersen.
Yeah, exactly. That would be even more shocking. But I just have a feeling there's going to be some big news coming up in the coming days that I'm gonna be shocked. Whenever I hear about it, could be right after I walk in the door. Maybe a little bit, maybe 9:30 ish or so right after work when when I'm about to go walk my dog. Right before I walk my dog, I usually usually pick up check my phone for any text I received or anything while I was out of work that time. So could be around then. Could be could even happen while I'm asleep for all I know. I could be
Well,
well
this is true.
I could be woken up with an alert from the NHL apps.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And let's hope that's the case because if you really look at it, the Rangers can't wait too long now. They really bought themselves some time by having this 10-game winning streak. But if you really look at it, the Rangers are so shorthanded. They have guys like Nick Bonino and Tyler Pitlick that either aren't even in the organization anymore or are in the minor leagues. I believe Tyler Pitlick is currently on a rehab assignment down in Hartford right now. So there's a chance we see him again at some point this year. But I mean, right now you have Edstrom and Rempe occupying those roles on the fourth line, and those two guys with Barclay Goodrow, I like that mix up a lot. To be honest, I would have no problem riding those three guys into the postseason, and then really fortifying your top nine. When you got the top nine, you obviously got Kreider as a Benajad and whoever you want on the right. Maybe they pick up Henrique. Maybe they pick up a Tarasenko that you mentioned. Maybe it's a guy like Frank Vetrano we've discussed, although that's going to be expensive because it might end up costing you a first-round pick, or maybe some of the other guys don't. So there's a lot to consider. And one of the other things the Rangers really have to consider, though, is not messing with the locker room core, kind of like they did last year, where it seemed like the chemistry really got knocked out, uh, you know, right around this time when they started fixing everything and getting everything in motion to get the Patrick Kane trade done. This is about a month after they finished up the Tarasenko trade. So, what do you think, Dan? Because there is a really big balance they're going to have to do, especially after all the evidence from last year, to fortify this team going into the playoffs.
I feel they're going to make one of those small but big moves.
So kind of more like what they did in 22 as opposed to 23, right?
Yeah, that's what I just feel has to be done. That's what needs to be done, and I just have a feeling it's going to be an interesting playoff. I just have a feeling Matt Rempe is going to be the next rookie to have some big moments in the playoffs for the Rangers. Shades of Chris Kreider in 2012.
Yeah, that's a good call. That's a really good call too. The only difference being that Kreider was coming right out of college and going right from winning a college national championship to come and jumping right into the postseason. But hey, I mean, Matt Rempe is in a similar situation where this is a guy that has never played in the NHL before, he's going to be lucky that he's going to have a good 20-game sample of regular season hockey before he gets hit with some of this postseason atmospheric stuff. But yeah, man, it's going to be it's going to be a lot of pressure, and there's a lot that he has to decide. He being Chris Drury. I mean, me and you were talking about this fourth line. So I think a lot of us don't have any issue with Rempe being on that fourth line going into the playoffs, and obviously Barclay Goodrow is a home run there. But Edstrom, Dan, do you like him being in that mix? Would you be okay with both of those guys being that young, or do you think maybe they keep Rempe and bring in a veteran to take Edstrom's spot and send him back down?
I just feel like they're going to bring in a veteran down the line there, down that stretch run. I feel like.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that too. I guess maybe you'd feel a little bit safer going with one rookie rather than two rookies on that fourth line where they can kind of get baited and abused. I've been seeing a lot of the old school fighters. Former Ranger John Scott coming out, if you remember. Former Ranger. I saw a couple of these guys. Ty Domi was talking about it, and Sean Avery about, Rempe picking his spots rather than just letting these guys come up to him, challenge them, and then drop the gloves. I mean, we saw, the fight on Sunday in Columbus where, Rempe got knocked on his ass against, I forget who the guy from Columbus was, but their big fighter knocked Rempe on his ass. And then if you saw the skate yesterday the Rangers had during practice, Rempe's sporting a pretty big black eye. So he found out, the old saying. So he fucked around, he found out, and now he's gonna have to learn that you have to size these guys up sometimes. You have to make sure that these that you're not going to just be baited into this fight and be abused, because a guy like Rempe has some skill. So him sitting in the box consistently 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, it might be nice to, while it might be nice to get that little kick in the ass, you'd rather have him on the ice than on the bench, right?
Yeah, exactly. Run out of money ice. It's taken away from our chances, and I have to say, Rempe needs to learn how to pick and choose when he gets into a fight. All right, he can't be like someone at a bar that's had one too many, that gets into a bunch of bar fights. This is a freaking the NHL, not some random evening at a bar in Woodside.
That's true. At Woodside, yeah, that's true, man. You're absolutely right, because realistically, when you think about it, like you said, when you run into guys in the bar, and if you are a good fighter, most of the time you're probably going to be able to kick that guy's ass. But when you're going in the NHL against these big guys on skates too, nonetheless, these guys know how to fight. They know how to handle themselves, and there's a reason why they've been hanging around the NHL for as long as they have. So I think the best thing to do for Rempe is not, hey, if the game, because, we all know that every once in a while you get yourself in a situation where a guy has to drop the gloves to ignite his team. And that's not always the case. So as long as Rempe, the longer he's in the NHL, the easier it's going to become for him, the more he's going to learn to pick his spots and, pick and choose when your team needs that bolt of energy, right?
Yeah, exactly. He needs to pick and choose. Also, I just have a weird feeling down the line, at some point this season, could happen during the playoffs, we're going to see Rempe get a Gordie Howe hat trick.
I can see that. Hey, I mean, he does the fights all the time. As long as he gets a goal and an assist in a game, I could definitely see that happening.
I could see it happening. Also, because if that guy ever shows, if we ever see that guy at a bar in Woodside, we're buying that guy a beer.
Oh, hell yeah, you got that right. Come on down to Woodside, Mr. Rempe, and we got you on the house. We the best seat in the house has you on the house, right, Dan?
Yep, exactly. If you ever stop by Donovan's, we'll make sure to get you a beer.
Exactly. Now, before we move on from the Rangers, their next game is going to be Saturday night after tonight. Right now, it's still no score in the second period, as me and you are doing the show right now. But the next game is going to be Rangers Maple Leafs on Saturday night. So that's going to be a big matchup. You know, keep our fingers crossed. Maybe the Rangers get a deal done at some point between now and then. But you know, the Maple Leafs that's going to be a big test for the Rangers heading into a big week, right?
Yeah, and I can tell you, if you're attending that game, if you somehow decide to make a trip that game, how crazy would that be to think that there's a possibility that a Rangers fan could get news of a potential trade as they're visiting the Hockey Hall of Fame before the game, because that's in Toronto, and I've said that's one of the more unique of the major sports Hall of Fames, one of the most unique Hall of Fame locations. That it's an area where you could visit the Hockey Hall of Fame in the daytime and attend a game at night. So how neat has that got to be for some Rangers fan that they get that text while they happen to be visiting the Hockey Hall of Fame?
That's true. That's a great point, man. And right now, just a quick live score check in. Oh, and just as I turn my head, Alexi Lafreniere to Artemi Panarin of the New York Rangers take a 1-0 lead with 12 minutes and 43 seconds remaining in the second period.
Yeah.
Yep. There you go. So we got a 1-0 lead right now. That's a nice way to put a bow on our Rangers segment, right?
Yeah, that's great. You get to almost see kind of how I react during a game. It's probably usually a little bit louder because I'm doing a show right now. But if you're seeing me watching a game, you got a kind of a sample of kind of how I react. It'd be a little crazier if I'm not doing a show at the same time as taking a look at the score of the game, but you get, I'm sure all you who watch can get the idea.
Absolutely. And you know what, actually, for our Patreon, we should have you record yourself watching a game one time. I think that'd be a fun idea, right?
Yeah, that should be a good idea. Hopefully you got a laptop or something with a camera that you could film me somewhere. I guess maybe I could find a way to we could make arrangements at a bar to film it. You know, someplace where you could set it up where I'm while I'm watching the game and you guys could see the reaction. That'd be a great little Patreon thing.
Yeah, and by the way, thank you to everybody watching live on Twitch right now that's checking us out. We're streaming this live for the first time. I tried on Kick too. I don't think that worked, but hey, you know, this is a test stream, so we appreciate everybody checking us out right now. If you want to support us, you can check out our Patreon we were just talking about. It's $5 a month, patreon.com/Best Seat in the House podcast. A lot of extra bonus stuff on there, so we appreciate you checking that out. But Dan, let's keep the show rolling along here right now, and let's get into the Knicks MSG roommates right there. As the shorthanded Knicks last night end up losing 115-92 to the Pelicans, and a couple of troubling injuries going into that game, as Jalen Brunson, the Knicks MVP candidate, was suffering from neck spasms and was scratched from the game, along with Isaiah Hartenstein, who had a sore Achilles. Luckily, you know, it's nothing like Aaron Rodgers, like he didn't tear his Achilles, but he's got a sore Achilles, you know, probably from playing so much lately, and they sat him out the second half of the back-to-back yesterday. Brunson obviously didn't play either. As we're going into the next game now, the Knicks play the Warriors on Thursday, and Brunson remains questionable. Looks like Hartenstein is going to be back. But, you know, what do you think about these two injuries and how they affect the Knicks going forward, Dan?
Well, I just hope this one doesn't affect us too bad. Hopefully it's at the very least one game, and it had nothing much. But we've seen earlier the Knicks somehow rise to the occasion against these tough opponents. So I expect nothing less than that.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with you on that. And you know, I think Brunson, I think most likely, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed for this, but I think most likely both guys were scratched just because it was the second half of the back-to-back. Obviously, the Knicks have to give some kind of reasoning for it, so they go with neck spasms for Brunson, which these guys, are tough professional athletes. When you put your body through the rigors of an 82 game NBA season, you're gonna have bumps and bruises and tears and all these kind of things. So I'm sure that when the Knicks say that Brunson was dealing with neck spasms, that he probably did have something along those lines. But it's I don't think it's going to keep him out long term. I see it being more along the lines of the him just not wanting to play back to back, especially look, the Knicks know right now they're shorthanded, so they kind of gave that game to the Pelicans yesterday. It's a West Coast team, I'm sorry, a Western Conference team where they it losing to them doesn't hurt them as much. And now I know they're still playing another West Coast team on Thursday against Golden State, but you want to make sure that you have your team ready to go for that. Couple of days off. Brunson and Hartenstein both get a day off or an extra day to recuperate. And then right now, after you get those two guys back, the countdown is just on until OG and Julius Randle rejoin the Knicks for the playoff push, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel this game, you kind of need to pull out all the stops for this one. This is a game that I feel like just really boosts the morale against one of these tough opponents.
Yeah, absolutely. And people take the Pelicans for granted too. People still act like they're the garbage team that came in the NBA and just floundered for the first couple of years that they were in New Orleans and everything. And they're not that team anymore. That's a pretty talented team. We saw Zion on the court yesterday. They have a lot of young talent. They have the same record as the Knicks too. So it's not a situation like we saw with the other Garden team, the Rangers, as they dropped that game to the Columbus Blue Jackets and currently lead 1-0 tonight. But we went into these two games against Columbus saying, hey, hopefully the Rangers could win both and get 4 points. You go into a game and you think that way because Columbus has performed so badly this year. And they're, as Keith Hernandez would say, a second division team. The New Orleans Pelicans are not that kind of team, right, Dan? I mean, that's a team. They're 35-24, same as the Knicks, 11 games over 500, and they're right there in the playoff race too.
Yeah, exactly. You can't take the Pelicans lightly.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And that's I don't think that's what the Knicks did last night, because the fact of the matter is they were so short-handed that they really just couldn't compete. When you looked at the starting five from last night, with guys like Jericho Sims and Miles McBride and stuff like that, when you're getting 30 plus minutes from those guys, you can't really expect to compete in the NBA. This isn't the G League, right?
Exactly. You gotta have all your main guys there. When it gets to this time of year.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think that's just about going to do it for the Knicks over here as they have off tonight. They continue their homestand playing against the Golden State Warriors on Thursday. So the Warriors are right there, right around the same record as the Knicks. Knicks might be 3 or 4 games better overall, but they're still right there. Obviously, Golden State's always a dangerous team. And, I did want to talk about not Klay Thompson, but his brother, because right now his brother is having a pretty nice spring training for the Mets. But I did want to talk one little bit about football before we got into some spring training baseball and kept the show rolling along here, Dan. But the funny thing is that have you heard all of this stuff coming from the Jets over the last couple of days now? I'll fill you in if you haven't been paying attention, as these reports have all come out lately. ever since Mecole Hardman really opened his mouth. And the now, if you're not familiar, Mecole Hardman had spent the last few years with the Kansas City Chiefs, won a couple of Super Bowls there, was a special teams, like maybe 3 or 4 receiver guy for them, but won a couple of championships, had a great time, signed with the Jets about a couple of weeks after all the chatter with Aaron Rodgers started going down. And the Jets just botched that move completely. And unfortunately for the Jets and for Mecole Hardman became a malcontent pretty quickly, because he was talking about on a podcast the other day about how by week 5, now let's get this right. This is week 5 on when the Jets were playing Kansas City and they were getting ready for week 6 against the Philadelphia Eagles. He was already texting Patrick Mahomes and guys in the Kansas City Chiefs front office to, quote, come get me, because he's sick of being with the Jets and that they're not using him. Now, the fact of the matter is he got beat out in training camp for the main punt returning job by undrafted free agent rookie Xavier Gibson. And he was pissed off about that. And the Jets asked him, after Gibson tweaked a hammy going into the Philadelphia game, the Jets asked him to return punts for them. And he refused and said that they didn't give him enough time and he had a banged up finger. He gave every excuse in the book. He just comes across really as an unlikable guy. And this is a guy who just a couple of weeks ago I was defending. And, from Jet fans who were upset because he caught the game-winning touchdown pass in overtime of the Super Bowl this year. So, I was happy for him. And now after hearing this, I'm thinking to myself, man, this guy was a real piece of crap. And before I even get into the more incriminating stuff, Dan, what do you think about this stuff that I'm talking about right now?
This has got to be driving the Jet fans nuts. I could only imagine I just heard about this now. I'm just probably going to be hearing about this from every Jets fan I know. They're going to be like scratching their heads over this, I imagine.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Doing a lot more than scratching my head over it, Dan. Because also, too, when Mecole Hardman's talking about that, how does he not realize that this is going to be a bad thing for the Chiefs now, too? Because now tampering gets involved. If you think about it, if he's a player on the Jets, you cannot be texting or tweeting or DMing any of the guys on the Chiefs and saying, come get me. That is 100% tampering. That shows he was talking with these guys, and that shows that the Jets are probably going to end up getting some type of compensation from the Kansas City Chiefs for that, because that's blatantly illegal, right?
Yeah, I could potentially see he's going to be suspended, or probably the first maybe 5 games, at least 3 games of the season.
Well, I don't know if they're going to suspend him. The players' union sticks up for their guys pretty much, but I could see a fine, maybe for the player and the organization. And I could even say, I think the Kansas City Chiefs are probably going to end up losing a draft pick over this. Now, do I think it's going to be a first-round pick? Probably not. But maybe a third, maybe a fourth-round pick, which will go to the Jets. I could definitely see that happening. And, even though that's not, the best compensation, that's pretty good for the Jets to at least get something for that,
Yeah, exactly. They'll at least get something for that, and though whatever they do with those draft picks could come a long way, because we've seen these low draft picks turn out to be some big moves in the long run.
Oh yeah, you're definitely right about that. And but Dan, the funny thing is though that I heard something today that's even more crazy. Several players, and now I'm reading this from Twitter. So here, let me share this page, because this is fascinating when you see this kind of stuff right here. So if you look closely, let me zoom in. If you look closely, Kenny Yeboah, Jets tight end, former Jets tight end. I think he's a coach with them right now. But Thomas Morstead, the Jets punter, was basically tweeting about saying, hey, be careful what you believe from disgruntled former employees getting beat out by a rookie free agent, guaranteed millions of dollars. So basically Thomas Morstead is saying that McCole Hardman was being, an entitled little prick, and he was mad that he wasn't getting his playing time. And you see the guy underneath him said, Kenny, how you feel about Cole? Kenny goes, he's tripping out. He ain't talking about his own work ethic and how the Georgia Eagles got our game plan. Now, I don't know. I was looking into it. I don't know what he means by Georgia. Maybe they went to the same school together in college. I'm not sure. But what he is implying there is that Mecole Hardman leaked the Jets' offensive game plan to the Eagles during their Week 6 matchup. And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, not that it really was different from a lot of the other games, but the Jets could not move the ball all game in that game. And that was a week after they had a really great game against the Kansas City Chiefs. So it didn't really make sense. And now Kenny Yeboah and Sauce Gardner are both coming out to say, now this is a tweet that Sauce, as Dove Kleiman was, saying, this is a tweet that Sauce was quick to delete. But he goes, we ain't going to talk about how our offensive game plan got leaked versus the Eagles, though. So until today, I haven't heard anything about the Jets' offensive game plan getting leaked against the Eagles. And now multiple people are coming out and saying that it's because of this kid, Mecole Hardman. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's crazy how this turns out. But there is going to be just a lot of talk about this. This is almost even crazier than than the Belichick Spygate of 2007.
Now that you mention it, it does kind of have a Spygate feel to it a little bit. You're right. It's it's just weird, man. I really can't believe that the Jets would put themselves in a situation like that. That this guy, Mecole Hardman, would be that much of a disgruntled player that he would go out there and, leak state secrets essentially to the team they're going to play. That seems crazy. That seems spiteful to me. And to be honest, even if I'm a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, who he just won a Super Bowl with, I wouldn't want that guy on my team. Would you?
No, I would send that guy's bags packing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's exactly how I feel too. So, I mean, and that's exactly what the Jets did. Shortly after that, Mecole Hardman was shipped out back to Kansas City. So take that for whatever it's worth. And right now is the corner of my eye as I see the New York Rangers have extended their lead to 2-0 over the Columbus Blue Jackets. So there we go. There's a little good news right there in the midst of this Jets dysfunction. But yeah, man. So just a crazy story, and it's something that could only come out of the New York Jets, right?
Yeah. It's only with that team. I just imagine how the heck did these Jet fans survive? I feel like I guess being the fact you're a Jets fan, you must have been on suicide watch your entire life.
I'll tell you this much: none more than this past season, too.
Yeah, but I could imagine your girlfriend probably had suicide prevention on speed dial.
Well, you're right about that. No doubt about that. That's especially for all my teams, she'd have to do that. But yeah, you're absolutely right about that, buddy. As the Jets have tortured me my whole life, and this 2023 season was about as bad as it gets. And now seeing all this stuff come out, it's even worse to me. And you know what, Dan? This tells me even more that I'm 100% right in my feeling that Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, and all these guys have to go because nobody's running the show. I mean, who's the guy in charge right now for the Jets? Is it Aaron Rodgers? Is he the top guy in the organization right now? The quarterback that's been on the team less than a year? Like, I love Aaron Rodgers, and I'm happy the Jets have him, and I'm not one of these guys that want him gone or turned on him or anything. But your quarterback can't be the be all end all in your organization. The owner stinks. He comes out and puts his foot in his mouth every once in a while. The GM today, even today, I saw a very lukewarm, meeting with the media today from him that I was not very impressed with. And then the coach, Robert Saleh, I don't even know, but they put out the rankings that players gave to their coaches and everything. And Robert Saleh was rated a B- as a head coach, but he was also rated 24th out of 32 head coaches. So that's not telling me anything good about my head coach. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's like whatever the Jets organization is running, it's got to be worse than the Dunkin' Donuts in my neighborhood, which I feel like I have the worst run Dunkin' Donuts ever. and
well, that's
and
the worst.
Yeah, and I gotta say that it does not surprise me when that team is owned by a guy whose name happens to be right. And sorry if I'm laughing at this one. This guy's name is Woody Johnson. and this guy owns a company called Johnson Johnson. and to be more puns about the product that this guy owns. You know how they make that shampoo that they no more tears. That's got to be a lie from what I've seen from every Jets fan I know, because all I see is tears.
Yeah, that's a damn good line, Dan, because you're 100% right about that. As the Jets have given me and most of my Jet fan brethren nothing but tears our entire lives. So you know what, Woody, I'd much rather have the tears from the shampoo than the football team. So how about we reverse that one of these years?
Exactly. Sorry, I just can't help but laugh at the fact that his name happens to be Woody Johnson, and he owns a company called Johnson Johnson. It's literally a Beavis and Butthead script within itself.
Yep. Yeah, it definitely is. You're right about that, man. And so you know what? We got one more thing I wanted to hit before we start closing the show down over here. And I wanted to talk a little spring training baseball at you, Dan. Right now, the Mets have won their fourth straight after dropping their spring training opener. They're 4-1 so far. Obviously, we know it's spring training, so you take it with a grain of salt. But it was nice to see Pete Alonso hit his first home run in the spring today, right?
Yeah, this guy doesn't surprise me at all. I feel like he's on all cylinders. I mean, Pete. Ever since he's been in professional baseball, I think even before he was in professional baseball, he's always taken it seriously, and he's just always trying to get that next victory, that next achievement. It seems that's what he's always aiming for. That he just always has that foot on that gas. It feels like for as long as he's been playing baseball, it feels like, and that's nothing more than what I expect.
Yeah,
and I expect Pete to continue that, and
I agree with you.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I expect Pete to continue that. This guy, he seems to be a winning player, and I just hope that he sticks around long enough that he'll get to propel this team to the promised land.
Yeah, and Pete's been here long enough now. He understands the fan base. We understand him. I still don't understand the Met fans that don't want him back. I don't understand how you could not want a guy like Pete. Pete's a guy. He's the type of guy that you want to build your franchise around, not take away from your franchise. So some Met fans don't know what they have already, right, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. I just feel like this guy has just managed to not be phased wearing this uniform, and I feel that is one of the biggest challenges in baseball is to succeed wearing the uniform of the New York Mets, and he's risen to the occasion, just like he has his entire baseball playing life. This guy, I hear like high school days and college, they they didn't expect him to get to where he was, but he just kept his foot on the gas, and he was going to do everything he could to prove him wrong, and he's doing that, and he's managed to show himself. It's reached the point that he's having a lot of success wearing one of the most difficult uniforms to have a success in.
That's true. And hey, I mean, he's done things in this uniform that nobody else has done before. I mean, he was the first guy to ever hit 50 for the Mets. He's the first rookie to ever hit 53 in a season. He broke Aaron Judge's record. He's the first Met to ever have multiple 40 home run seasons. And you know what? When you look at a guy like Darryl Strawberry, who was talking about Pete today, he said, hey, records are made to be broken, talking about his 252 homers, the club record for the Mets currently. Right now you have him at 252, David Wright at 242, and Mike Piazza at 220 as the three top home run hitters in Met history. And Pete Alonso is going to shatter that mark if he stays here. So it's imperative to get this guy locked up long term and to make sure that he owns every record, because even Straw was saying today, like I was saying, records are made to be broken, and you couldn't pick a guy better than Pete Alonso to break those records, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just glad that I'm seeing one of the greats of our time. I'm glad I'm glad to be able to say that I'm seeing this, and I hope I can continue to be able to say to talk about. There will be more future years of this story when future generations ask us about Pete Alonso. I want there to be more to the story.
Exactly. We want to talk about Pete Alonso like our parents talked about guys like Dave Kingman, or like we looked at guys like Mike Piazza in the past, and Todd Hundley in the 90s when the Todd Squad was big, and Howard Johnson in the late 80s and the early 90s. Guys like that set the tone from a power perspective for this franchise, where until the Mets got Kingman, there really was not much power to be had in the history of this organization. I mean, Frank Thomas in 1962 hit 34 home runs, and that stood as the Mets mark for home runs in a season until Kingman broke it over a decade later.
Yeah, so that's to put into contrast what we're looking at here. Like we're, we're looking at one of the greats of our time, and I hope we continue. Yeah. I hope to continue seeing this. I just feel the more I I just hope that this is true. Everything I'm hearing in that interview with Steve Cohen during I think it was I forgot if it was during Baseball Night in New York. I've been watching Mets Hot Stove. It was somewhere in SNY. They were talking about it. I hope we continue to see more. We continue to see this, and it gets to a point where Steve Cohen just has to throw. He's going to be throwing some giant bags of money at Pete.
You're right about that, man. You're right about that. And one other guy we threw a bag of money at right now, as we're just about done here. Just a couple of little more things to touch on. As Starlin Marte made his spring training debut today. Let's hope he is fully healthy, as he had off-season groin surgery and should be 100% now. He started off 0 for 2 today, but nice to see Starlin back in the lineup today. And, if we could get him looking anything like he looked his first year as a Met, maybe he'll have a big season for us.
Yeah, exactly. I expect to see big things from Starlin Marte if things go as planned. And right now, I just feel like I guess spring training so far, I just feel like right now the first couple of games, I feel just getting a rust of it. I feel the real telling thing during spring training is I feel the last 2 weeks are the big thing. You really get a sense in where the team's at when you're in those last 2 weeks of spring training, as far as I see it.
No, you 100% are correct about that. But also, I feel a lot better about Starlin Marte right now that we're seeing him on February 28th for the first time, as opposed to, remember in years past where the Mets would wait until March 15th or whatever to run a guy like Marte out there for the first time. And then when you're opening day is on March 31st. You're only giving the guy 2 weeks to get ready, you know? And a lot of the times in recent years, the guy hasn't been ready for opening day. Now I
Yes,
feel enough time, you know?
yeah, exactly. Speaking of guys that are going to be ready, I guess we're a week or so from seeing Diaz, and I am eagerly waiting to see I am eager to see the round of applause that Edwin Diaz is going to get in his. I mean, just a spring training game, and you know he's going to get a huge round of applause his return.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. Met fans love Edwin Diaz, and it's funny how that turned, especially since how bad his Met career started off. But in 2019, he was one of the worst closers I've ever seen in my life. But then again, in 2022, he's one of the best closers I've ever seen in my life. So we've seen the best and we've seen the worst of Edwin Diaz. Now he's going to be on the second year of his big long-term extension. Hey, hopefully he lives up to the contract, and hopefully he looks like we saw back in 2022, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I just feel like the tide was turning on Edwin Diaz. I feel, as weird as this is, the 2020 season, it just seemed like he just, I don't know, maybe something, he just realized that first year wearing that uniform must have pushed him to try to better what the outcome of his 2019 season. So I guess he just, I don't know, something must have really pushed him to have these monster year he had in 2022. Just from having a bad year wearing the uniform of the Mets, and it's showing, and I expect more of that.
I'm with you. And another guy that's looking to show us the best of himself in a Mets uniform is Tristan Thompson, former LA Dodger, bunch of former teams, as a matter of fact. Tristan Thompson, Clay's brother, the brother of Clay Thompson, who will be here on Thursday night against the Knicks with his Golden State Warriors. Tristan Thompson, however, will be down in Port St. Lucie with the New York Mets, and he's off to a red-hot start. He hammered his second home run today. He's hitting over 500 in the early on goings of spring training. What do you think, Dan? Does this guy have a chance to make the team out of spring training?
I feel he does. They need to find some room for this guy, because this guy could have a monster year. And how amazing would that be if you have two brothers making a real name for themselves in New York sports, in two different sports?
Well, I mean, let's keep our fingers crossed that Clay doesn't make that big of an impact on Thursday, because then the Knicks are really going to be in trouble, right?
Yeah, exactly. But just the thought of that potentially, hopefully 2 seasons that end, hopefully get end of the outcome we hope we do. How crazy would that be? That would be one heck of a book, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. No doubt about it.
Yeah, two brothers being on championship teams in New York in two different sports. That would be one heck of a book.
No doubt about it. But with that big contract that Curry's got in Golden State, I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. But yeah, hey man, it's definitely something fun to think about. And I'm sorry, I meant Klay Thompson, not Curry, but you know what I meant. But yeah, so absolutely really fun to think about right now, especially with Tristan Thompson hammering the ball for the Mets down in PSL. Something to keep in the back of all New York fans' mind. And Dan, yeah, I think that's just about going to do it for us today. Before we get out of here, do you have anything you'd like to plug for yourself?
Sure, I gotta plug my my Twitter account, Bobo103NYC. It's on Instagram, Bobo718DK, and that's the same username on Threads. Also, it's one word, Daniel Curlin on YouTube. You can see a lot of my content there on YouTube, including the video you just saw, the Stadium Series. And by the way, a little thing I do got to say about that Stadium Series video, which hopefully will pull off getting to a Rangers game, because I had actually typed a script for us to do at the Stadium Series, but I greeted you. I thought the funny idea to do like a rap that Mordecai and Rigby would do in an episode of Regular Show. Hopefully, you'll get to see that on a YouTube video one of these days, at some point before the season's out.
We will definitely be doing that, no doubt about it, man. Well, I was actually looking up what Ranger games the other day would make sense for us to hit. So we're definitely going to catch a game before this year is over. And yeah, that's about going to do it for us today. As you saw with Dan, you can check us out on Instagram at Best Seat in the House Podcast. Check us out on Twitter, bsith_podcast. Also, hope everybody liked our first ever Twitch stream today. So if you want, you can check us out on Twitch. Uh, Also, the stream for Kick didn't work today, but we're gonna mess that a little bit, and hopefully the next time we do this, we'll be doing Kick too. So just a couple more places to get the name out there, and if anybody wants to see our show, give them a chance to watch it. So we appreciate anybody that tuned in on Kick tonight. We appreciate anybody that tuned in on Twitch tonight for the live stream. Also, we'll be back on YouTube tomorrow, like always. And if you want to support us, Dan, as always, check out our Patreon, right?
Yep, exactly.
There we go. Only $5 a month. Check out our Patreon, please. Patreon.com/Best Seat in the House Podcast. So that's going to do it for us today, everybody. We appreciate all your support and everybody tuning in tonight, catching the latest edition of Best Seat in the House. As always, I'm your host, Rob Kramer, along with my co-host, Daniel Bobo Curlin, and we'll catch you next week on Best Seat in the House Podcast, everybody.